on to Candace Cameron Bure. We were talking about her yesterday in the context of Great American Family and all of the backlash that she's gotten for moving on from her Hallmark days onto this alternative platform because of a controversy about their representation of LGBT.
Before we get into it, can I just point out that like my desire most of the time to try and at least steelman the argument from the other perspective tends to make it seem like I'm riding the line here. I'm actually 110% in support of what she's doing with this network, and I think it's a great idea. I just think it's worthy of to at least acknowledge that the other perspective from the people who are disagreeing with them, they at least have a right to be heard in like the most flattering form of their argument, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not that I don't think that the concept is a good idea, or that it's born, or that I believe that it's born out of some type of hatred. I just really do believe that we should give both sides a fair amount of respect when we try to present their arguments. So
sure.
It's just so I'm
less of that persuasion than you are.
Whenever I'm editing it, I'm always like, man, I'm.
You sound like a milquetoast fence sitter.
And to be fair, I am of sorts, probably more so than some. I don't think of myself that way, but I try to present both. Some would say, my brother or my friends would say, maybe it's more that you're that you're contrarian. That you just want to present the other argument for the sake of presenting the other argument?
I just think given the absolute vitriol and flaming hatred from the left to Candace Bure, we ought to just represent them for exactly what they are.
And these ones, yes. Especially
there have been more reactions to Candace Bure and her comment that Great American Family movies are going to put the focus on traditional marriage. This is something that Candace Bure said in response to a question about whether they were going to represent same-sex couples in their movies. They're not. That is why she said it. She didn't say it of her own accord. So here's some reactions. Firstly, from JoJo Siwa of Dance Moms fame. And
JoJo
we actually
Siwa
talked
is Maren
about
Morris levels of annoying.
Oh yeah, she's really annoying. So they actually had a spat earlier this year that I think we did talk about, where JoJo Siwa made a TikTok and implied that Candace Bure was the rudest celebrity she had ever met. And then Candace Bure, the sweet woman she is, was like, oh my gosh, JoJo, I'm so sorry that happened. And it was only because when JoJo was like 11 years old, she asked for a picture with her, and Candace Bure told her, not right now. And they were on a red carpet when that happened.
Dead Man says it is pronounced Bure.
Bure? Like puree? Like a baby food?
Like Buhrei.
Oh. I don't know if I believe that.
That makes sense because there was a hockey player named Pavel Bure, and I think it's spelled the same. The reason I want to point out is how she reacted to JoJo Siwa in that one is the same thing that's going on now. She's being nothing but supportive, and then everybody else is getting really angry and asking and talking about how she's angry. Holly Robinson Pete says she also starred in several Hallmark films, but she says, go make the content that you want to make, but why insist on castigating others? It's the judgment for me.
Like, how was she castigating anybody by responding to a question that outright asks, are you going to represent same-sex couples on Great American Family?
She did the most polite answer ever.
Wasn't even a no. It was a roundabout answer of
maybe
no,
later.
We are going to show traditional marriage.
And I think what the idea is like maybe once we get off the ground, like I don't think that's what they want.
The CEO said no doors are closed.
So like maybe down the line,
in response to that question,
once down the line, once we've established ourselves more,
I think that's too weak of a response, in my opinion. But like, they're clearly not intending to do that anytime soon. So JoJo Siwa went to Instagram and said, honestly, I can't believe she would not only create a movie with the intention of excluding LGBTQIA+, but then also talk about it in the press. This is rude and hurtful to a whole community of people. And then Jodie Sweetin, a co-star of Candace's on Full House, went and commented on JoJo's post saying, I love you. And, this is just a perfect example of one of these celebrities who pretends to be this magnanimous, sweet, coexist, preachy type of, kumbaya person, but in reality spits the most vitriol and hatred and ignorance.
Nobody is meaner than the person who has "be kind" in their profile.
Yeah, that's exactly how Jodie Sweetin comes off, because I remember us covering an incident after the overturning of Roe v. Wade when Jodie Sweetin was found in a video protesting on a freeway in LA, blocking the freeway so that people couldn't get to and from their jobs. Yeah. And she was shoved by a cop while she was being extremely belligerent. And then she was getting praised on the internet for doing this, for civil disobedience.
She's a crybaby.
Yeah, exactly. And then when that happened, she said, our activism will not be deterred by any of this. Like, we're going to keep going and until our voices are heard, or some BS like that. She's absolutely indoctrinated. I'd hate when people like this pretend to be stable, because she's clearly a very angry woman.
So the problem is that they've learned that they know how to speak in coherent sentences, and it gives the illusion of stability, and they're not stable. I do want to point out that this is my problem with what Jojo Siwa said. I can't believe that she would not only create a movie with the intention of excluding LGBTQIA+, but then would also talk about it in the press. First of all, my first problem with that is the second part. It says, how dare you have an opinion I disagree with and have the gall to talk about it in public? But my other point is that any story is a self-contained entity that has parameters which you must meet, and there is no obligation from any writer to include or be inclusive of any group, be it straight, gay, transgender, anything. There is no responsibility on their part to do so, and nor does it make them bigoted for not including anyone. One could make the argument now that we live in a culture where you're not even allowed to write about something that you don't understand. So perhaps those writers, if they are not gay, if they are not bisexual, if they are not lesbian, if they are not transgender, they don't understand those cultures. Therefore, they cannot write a story about it anyways.
There's no winning. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, so you might as well not try.
We are now in a culture with endless other options full of inclusivity for you to choose from. Maybe 20 years ago, I could buy that this is an argument from somebody who's extremely ahead of the curve and they're trying to force change, but the change has already been made culturally. I wouldn't expect Bros to have a bunch of straight people in it for my representation, nor the L word would have required, although I don't remember if there were straight couples in the L word. Like, there is no reason to include it if that's not the story you're telling. The problem is they are conflating the idea that you telling a story that doesn't include them as a bad thing rather than just something that is. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem.
Without any intention behind it. So Candace Bure's response to People magazine was very unbothered. Once again, she seems totally unshaken, which is really rare to find in Hollywood these days because, you know, usually the story when a celebrity receives any backlash is they immediately fold and they immediately apologize.
It's almost superhuman just how like polite and like annoying, almost like if I'm the naturally angry person, I'm going to look at the person being really nice and get annoyed because I'm not getting the reaction out of them that I want.
Yeah.
And
this is just stoking the flame even more.
Do you believe that this is because of her faith? That she feels a certain amount of contentment and drive and security in her position that comes from her religion, her belief in her faith.
That's what she's outwardly saying, and I totally believe that that's an aspect of it. I also think that given her age, she's at a stage in life where she is sure of herself and she's established her career, and now she has the freedom to do what she wants instead of following orders.
I see this stuff, and I'm going to give you guys this from the perspective of someone who's not religious. I see her behavior, and I wish that I could find myself in that realm, right? That I could have that call to faith that she does, because that's how you actually win over hearts and minds, right? I can't believe, how did we get to a point in our culture where these reactions are the ones that are winning people over and not this reaction?
Yeah, let me read an excerpt or two from Candace Bure's statement. She said, "All of you who know me know beyond question that I have great love and affection for all people. It absolutely breaks my heart that anyone would ever think I intentionally want to offend or hurt anyone." She continued, "To the members of the media responsible for using this opportunity to fan flames of conflict and hate, I have a simple message. I love you anyway. To those who hate what I value and who are attacking me online, I love you. To those who have tried to assassinate my character, I love you. To everyone reading this of any race, creed, sexuality, political party, including those who have tried to bully me with name-calling, I love you. I have long wanted to find a home for more faith-based programming. I'm grateful to be an integral part of a young and growing network.
How can you not love that? Like, I don't know if that's being just because she's been media trained her whole life. I don't know if
I'm sure that's part of it, but also I see this genuine peace.
Yes. Yeah. There's no inner conflict there.
And my reaction would be like, no, F you guys. Here's why I'm right. And it's really telling that she's just so confident in her stance and her values that she doesn't even need to respond to these people. And they're intellectually dishonest, disingenuous, clamoring at her feet. They're ankle biting because she's someone who's capable of creating something new, doing it independently, and they are not capable of that. They have to be loyal to a mega corporation
because their ideology is generally unfavorable. Therefore, they need it to be bludgeoned onto you by bigger properties that didn't start out that way.
And mind you, Hallmark raised all of its money and all of its notoriety off the backs of stories featuring, guess what? Traditional marriages, traditional relationships.
And I think it does speak to the population. There was a comment earlier that says after, I'm going to paraphrase here because it's gone past there. He talks about basically like since 2016, all the craziness since then, they're looking forward to seeing traditional marriages and families shown on screen. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't actually believe that there's a problem with the concept of representation. I believe that there's a humongous failure in execution and a fault in many of the people that use it as a political bludgeoning tool rather than something to actually aspire to.
Yeah, and I think that there is a genuine case for representation when we know that the powers that be actively discourage traditional marriages and traditional family structures from being portrayed in media. Yeah. That's a genuine call for representation right there.
And it's one of those things. I think it's why maybe it's like a selling point for the nostalgia, right? People they're not just nostalgic for the properties they once knew. They're nostalgic for the values that were once instilled in society in a way that affected them in a way that maybe that without more self-reflection, they can't really point out as to why they want it or why they're missing it or why they need it back in their life. But that might play into the nostalgia a little bit, right? Like that sense of stability, that sense of concrete values that you can feel the world feel stable under your feet because the world around you makes sense through your value system. And as that's eroded little by little, we as a society become more unstable. And what people are longing for isn't necessarily just properties that they loved, but a time when those properties were in a society that made more sense.
That's that capitalism of the spirit. The good wins because it has to, and the bad loses because it simply has to. It's not appealing, and there's no getting around that. Bros failed as a rom-com because it's an artificial attempt at representing same-sex couples who don't live lifestyles like that.
Yeah, and like insult to those that are. Think about all the people. A little bit before your time, but like I think about all the people when we were going through the actual civil rights battle to legalize gay marriage. Whatever people think of it.
It's not civil rights,
okay. If we're talking about, that's what a lot of people believe to be the last great human rights case in this country. Whether we call it a human right, whatever.
More like that's how government encroachment upon religious institutions.
The point is, at that time, the argument that they were making is, we just like you. We do not want to be looked at as stereotypes. We want to go to work and come home to our spouses and be who we are without fear of reprisal. And that was something that rallied a lot of people of my generation behind that cause because it was something they could understand. They understood that despite the little differences, they lived a similar existence to them. What we see now is not that same similar existence. That's not what we see at parades. That's not what we see at Drag Queen Story Hour. And it's certainly not what we see in these media portrayals. And that's where they lost people. And that's kind of a heartbreak, because it goes to that notion that activists don't understand that there is no end to their cause, because by solving your problem, you put yourself out of a job. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are now. We're past the point of the problem's was rectified. You legalized the cause you were looking for. And then now there's just more and more to do, whether we think that's right or not. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.